Hey, what's up, man? How are you?
Good. How are you? How are you?
I I'm good. I'm excited. So, for our guests that have never watched our show before, this is Safety Guy. We met on TikTok of all places, but you're kind of known as the Safety Guy.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I kind of I'm not really doing safety a lot much anymore these days, but I took it and ran with it. I took the name; it
yeah,
wasn't being used. I took it and ran with it.
well, it makes sense. I mean, it's a good handle too. But you're probably so we've talked a couple times. You're probably one of the most chill people that I've ever talked to. Like, if you were my safety guy, I would feel just comfortable. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you put everyone at ease real well. But what I want to talk about today is H2S wells. So, we were talking about Landman, and I know you haven't seen this episode yet, and it's totally fine. But there's this scene where they're all driving through, and they're actually going hunting, and one guy gets out of the truck, and like they all fall down and die, and it's like super dramatic. And obviously, it's a TV show. It should be right. Everyone's trying to get a little
Right,
entertainment,
right.
but then the
It's
crew
it's
comes
a drama,
in.
not a documentary.
Exactly. The crew comes in to take care of it, and like they can't figure out what's going on because the wind's going the other direction, and all of a sudden
Hmm.
the wind flips back on them, and everyone they all freak out. Like the H2S monitors are going off, and they're trying to scramble to get masks. Part of the storyline, one of the guy loses his vision, and my wife, who doesn't know about any of this stuff, is sitting there on the couch with me, and she's like, "Oh my god, like what's going on? Like this is like it looks like a horror film. Like the way that they film it is like this unknown thing is killing people." But it's H2S, right? And so I wanted to just bring this back to reality and maybe walk through some of that. I know it is extremely dangerous. I know there's horrible cases where people have lost vision and lives even. And I just want to like kind of let's kind of like I guess get back to fundamentals for a minute on what it is.
Yeah. H2S is a very, very bad chemical. You can equate it to cyanide. It's pretty close. And the thing with H2S is that it not only targets your central nervous system, but it also removes the oxygen, or it makes your body to where you can't absorb oxygen. So it's really a lights out ordeal. And the way you're saying they dramatize the event, it can happen that way. And it can be we train on H2S all the time, right? So when it really happens and somebody goes down, it can be very dramatic. It's really about how well your team operates in an emergency situation. That's really what it boils down to, and how well you've prepared for that. Because with
Mm,
H2S in our industry, we train on it all the time. It's something we train on every year. Every year we do H2S training, and but if you've never had an alarm go off on location, then it almost becomes like a fictional character, right? Something we train for that's really never going to happen. So then when it does
mm,
happen, it can truly cause pandemonium and the loss of vision. So you mentioned that was part of the episode. That is a very,
yeah.
very real possibility with H2S at high concentrations. H2S will mix with water and turn into sulfurous acid. So our body is made up of water, right? So
Hmm.
one of the worst things you can do with rescue or when first aid treatment for H2S is fill somebody's mouth full of water, like give them a big drink. Because what you're doing is if there's sulfurous acid is in their mouth and in their throat, things like that, you're washing it down, and it's probably going to metabolize in their liver. I'm not a
My
doctor,
gosh.
but you got to think it dissolves in water, right? And our body's made up of that. So you've got to think that through when you start doing first aid. Somebody's had a really big exposure to H2S.
Man, that is that's gnarly. So I'm thinking through. I mean, so you guys are training on this all the time. There's H2S wells like that are more like think about this, right? So in the show, they come across a well that's just not properly plugged. I think that's the story at least, right? But like are there sites that maybe like that are dangerous because they're not properly plugged or like what's the story around that? Like
Well, so
could a common person just come across one?
here's what and I know you do a lot of work with Wade. Here's something I've
Yeah.
had to have discussions with engineers about. In order to increase the potency of H2S or increase the parts per million of H2S, you would treat it with acid to make it more strong, to make it stronger, right? So when we do like a tubing flush or run an acid job on tubing, high chances
Mhm.
are you're going to increase H2S if there's any in that well to begin with. You may
Okay.
see we've had wells in the past that doubled and tripled in parts per million on H2S because we ran an acid job. So the answer to that is yes.
Mhm.
A lot of times you will see there'll be a well side by side. You can have wells side by side, and one well be super high in H2S, and the next well will have nothing. It all, I mean, in your water tanks and your gas stream. You know, we've had chemical companies treat our water tanks and actually spike the H2S in the water tanks, but we weren't seeing much in the gas stream. So yes, you can have a well that not be properly capped, which that's what I do now, right? On the environmental side, I go around looking for leaks, but on each set of tanks, we have pressure relief valves and Nardos and thief hatches. And that's what they do. They're made to vent. So on an old
Right.
well where your thief hatches are venting off gas, if you've got H2S in your tanks and the water, then yeah, high chances are you're going to have H2S leaving. It needs to be so with every H2S well we drilled, we did an H2S contingency plan, and there was a factor in there where you punch in the numbers. The best estimated, the highest estimated H2S parts per million we expect on that location, and it spits out a formula, and it tells you at 100 feet the parts per million should be this. At 1,000 feet it should be this, and for it to be far enough to get off a location to actually cause issues off location, you're talking about a very, very high part per million on that well
Hmm.
because it's
Okay.
dispersing in air, right?
Yeah. So what are the chances of me just walking around coming across something like that? I mean, like is it like or is it like pretty well monitored, and these sites and tanks are checked frequently enough to where we would have a known problem and we could resolve it?
I don't wanna put our industry out on, blast, but, there's a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
older production that we never
Yeah.
check for H2S, and typically we check for H2S in areas that we know. A lot of
Yeah.
times companies that have chemical companies for that location running scavenger or demulsifier, whatever, or emuls
Hmm.
to check for H2S on that location. But typically we
Yeah.
do that on wells where we know or expect there's H2S on that location. So the
Yeah.
crazy thing is H2S is not specific to oil and gas.
Hmm.
Colorado just had six-person fatality on a dairy farm, and that is what we teach when we teach in confined spaces. 80% of
Man.
fatalities in confined spaces are would-be rescuers, and that's exactly what
Yeah.
happened. A guy went down in a pit on that farm, and five other guys went one after the other trying to rescue those guys, and they just kept passing one after another,
Oh my
and it was
gosh.
H2S in the bottom of that pit. You have likely smelt H2S.
Yeah.
If you pass by sewer ponds and things like that and you get the rotten egg smell,
Hmm.
chances are there's H2S in those ponds and that's what you're smelling.
Got it.
People smell it all the time.
Yes,
But
that it's
to
kind
the
of that sulfur rotten egg smell.
yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And to the
Yeah.
dramatic effect of a movie, it can happen. Yes, absolutely. You can have an H2S release on a location and it affect people off location, but the H2S would need to be significant on that lease for that to happen. It
Okay.
happened in Denver City, Texas. There's a story you can look up in Denver City, Texas, where a company was they were actually using H2S in a manufacturing process or something, and there was a pipeline leak behind a family's house in
Mhm.
Denver City. It was
Okay.
in Denver City or Colorado City, but it killed a whole family.
Yeah. Wow. That's horrible. So there's definitely a lot going on here with this. If I ever, I guess I need to tune up my H2S monitor when I'm out there on
Yeah,
site, but
yeah,
got to have one on. Absolutely. But yeah, so Taylor
always.
Sheridan wasn't yeah, he wasn't too far off. I mean, he's looking for, villains and things to put in the show, and it sounds like, this was an appropriate one to feature for sure.
H2S
But
is definitely a villain in
man,
our industry. Absolutely, it's one of the
yeah.
most dangerous aspects.
Yep, man. Well, good to know. A safety guy, I am so thankful for you taking time pulling over on the side of the road to just
Yeah,
talk with me about this, and
I appreciate it. I
we'll have to
appreciate you
catch you on the
having me.
next one.
Yeah,
Yeah, good
absolutely.
stuff, man. I'll see you soon.
All right, thank you.
Later.